I'm Mark Bouris and this is Straight Talk. Alex Fevola, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thank you for having me.
I got it here in my hand here, the book, Silver Linings, A Journey to Happiness. But we all know that to reach happiness, you've got to go on the journey. And that journey usually contains a whole lot of other shit.
Sure does.
Most people just look at someone like you and they think, oh, wow, what a blessed life and how good is she going and how wonderful is her life and all that sort of stuff. But a book actually tells a different story. And from your journey, you become a better person. But I guess we can't go past talking about the journey. And it is a bit messy, perhaps even a little bit emotional for you. So maybe take me back to when you were 21. Maybe that's a good start.
Mm-hmm.
A young woman, just married.
Well, engaged.
Engaged.
Yeah. I was with my partner at the time, Lonnie, who is my eldest daughter's biological father. And that was probably definitely the most difficult time in my life. I surprisingly fell pregnant with Mia and was probably not in the most secure of places with Lonnie. Our relationship was, if I'm honest, probably coming to an end. And then finding out we were expecting a baby, we decided to, try and work on the relationship and we made a pact to stay together. And for a little while, really thought that things were going to be okay. And then towards the end of the pregnancy, I was feeling very insecure and concerned about the relationship. Had the baby. That was quite a difficult experience in itself. It was a very long labour and it was a lot at the time. I'd just never been in hospital even at that point. So that was quite a shock, the physical side of childbirth. And then 4.5 weeks after Mia was born, my partner, Lonnie, passed away unexpectedly, and I then went through the journey of grief.
You were 21 at the time?
I was 22 by the time I had Mia.
Okay. I guess the big question for me is what did Lonnie die from?
He committed suicide. I still don't know why, and we don't really know the full extent of what he was going through. But, he took his own life. So it was a complete shock and just came out of nowhere.
You didn't see it coming?
No, I had a very, very bad feeling and I didn't know what it was, and I just felt this constant sense of dread at that point in my life, and I just couldn't put my finger on why I felt like that. So I most definitely had a premonition that something terrible was going to happen, but I didn't know what.
But as a young person, and I cast my mind back when I was 22, like I didn't really know much especially about relationships, about people. It's a hard thing to understand, particularly then. Probably a little more easy now because we're greater awareness about those sorts of things. But did you see signs in Lonnie? Do you suffer guilt in those times?
I think anybody that's experienced suicide will feel guilt at some point and will be asking questions. Could we have prevented it? Should we have known? Did I know? I definitely saw a change in his behaviour. I definitely think he was suffering a form of depression, but he was never diagnosed. So it's hard to categorically say yes. But I definitely saw a change in his moods and in his general self was not the same. And it was progressively getting worse. Did I think he would take his life? No. I most certainly didn't think that was ever going to happen. But I did worry about him all the time. But it was more a feeling of there would be an accident or, something may have been going to happen to him, but I never thought that it would be the way it went down. No.
Do you, I don't want to sound wacky, but like premonitions or a sense of things?
I certainly didn't in that period in my life.
You did or didn't?
I did.
Yeah.
I definitely had a very, very strong awareness and I don't know, I was very in tune with my intuition at that point in my life. And it's funny because I'm really not a believer in that kind of thing. But what I experienced during that period in my life was unexplainable. I had definitely had a premonition that something awful was going to happen, and that feeling was obviously about Lonnie, but it was also about myself and what I was about to experience with my own health emergency. And the period I went through from the birth onwards, that first 12 months was just, it explains that terrible dread I was feeling. It wasn't, I wasn't imagining it. It was definitely something awful coming. And so, yeah, I guess I definitely do believe in it to a certain extent now because I've experienced it. But do I have regular, feelings or psychic abilities? No, I don't. I believe in intuition and a gut instinct, definitely.
But do you think there's anything in the fact that you were pregnant and then you were a mother that your sensibilities are much more acute?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an instinct in mothers, definitely, to sense danger. You have an instinctual feeling of wanting to protect your baby. So, yeah, perhaps it was that I was pregnant, that my senses were higher.
And were you a person that would talk to him about what you were feeling, or were you sort of too caught up in your own pregnancy, about to have a baby, blah, 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 et cetera? I mean, like,
No,
how do you deal with that sort of stuff?
I was definitely trying to talk to him about him and how he was feeling. Is everything okay? What's wrong with you? But he wasn't really much of a talker. He was a 23-year-old guy. Wasn't exactly opening up about his feelings. So.
And how did you then, as a single mother, dealing with guilt, loss, grief, post-delivery baby, dependency, how did you manage the process there? Could you call on family? I mean, who do you call on?
Yeah, I went and moved in with my mum and my sister. My younger sister was living there at the time. My older sister, she had her own family, but she was really supportive as well. My dad, like my family, yeah, they were very supportive of me. My best friend, Penny, she was probably the greatest support out of everybody. She spent so much time with me throughout that period. And it's funny because, it's such a roller coaster. And some days I would want to talk and cry and, vent. And other days I couldn't even stand people being in the room with me. It was just, it was very hard for the people in my life, I think, to be around me because all they wanted to do was make me feel better, obviously, and they wanted to try to get me to talk. And some days I just, I just didn't want to be around anybody. And yet at the same time, I was feeling really irritated by people pitying me. I didn't want that pity. And so it was really hard, I think, for the people in my life at that time to sort of gauge what was the right thing to do, or say. And so, my family were amazing. My best friend was really good. She could read me and just knew just to sit with me sometimes and be quiet and not talk at all. And some days we'd, talk it all out and cry. And
is that upon reflection?
I was aware of it, but I couldn't control it. I often was just feeling so irritated by people sitting around and feeling sorry for me. And I don't know why I felt like that. I can't explain it, but I just didn't want people to pity me. And some days I just wanted to be left alone. But at the time I really couldn't be left alone because I had my baby and I couldn't, because I was experiencing these health issues at the time. There was a period of about a week where I couldn't get out of the bed. So I needed to have someone with me all the time. But I just don't think it probably was the best company because some days I just didn't speak.
Can you tell me what the health issues were? Do you mind discussing that?
So I won't go into too much detail because we could be here all day, but basically I hemorrhaged after. So the day that Lonnie passed, so that the actual day he died, I hemorrhaged on the same day, which was so bizarre, but that's what happened. I hemorrhaged up and it had been 4 weeks since the birth. Or
you hemorrhaged through uterus or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. So it was from the birth.
Yeah,
they found out there'd been retained placenta and that's what had caused the hemorrhage. So I was rushed to hospital, and then when I got to the hospital, they basically established that, that was what was wrong, and they had to schedule a surgery to remove the retained placenta, and then that surgery went very wrong. And they ended up perforating my uterus, my bowel, and then I ended up very, very sick and nearly died. So then I went through a process of that, having to recover from that. And so it was a really terrible time. I mean, and at the time when I was going through the process after the surgery and I knew something was wrong, the doctors obviously just assumed it was grief because of what it was the same day. So they were thinking, this girl's in shock, this girl's, got a lot going on. And I knew something was wrong. And I said to my mum, like, no, something else is wrong. This isn't right. I don't feel right. So that was really terrifying because no one would believe me. So I was left for hours and hours bleeding internally, and I had toxemia, and I was about to go septic. And yeah, if left any longer, I probably wouldn't have survived. So that in itself was so terrifying because I was sitting there at first thinking, having just lost Lonnie, I don't want to be here. That was your first initial thought. I can't live without him. I can't do this. I can't bear being in this world without him. But very, very quickly, my survival instinct kicked in because when I was faced with the reality of my own mortality, I very quickly realized, no, I need to be here because the biggest fear was leaving my baby with nobody. So, that in itself was a silver lining, dare I say. It sounds terrible and I would never want to go through that again, but it's what made me realize really quickly that I needed to be here and I wanted to be here for my baby. So,
Do you think in those times, your daughter, being like just born, collects some of the grief from you? Like your mom, she's not seeing it. She doesn't not aware of what's going on. But at the same time, do you think there is some collection of something or other from the mum to the daughter? Does your daughter have any recollection of any of this, or not a recollection, but like have a sense of this sort of stuff? What happened? Do you think has it endured within her? Or did you keep making up for it? I mean, because that's something might be an issue too. Like, have you felt guilty about any of that?
I think, I hope it hasn't. And I think I did everything I could to ensure she had a really happy childhood. And part of that was, not disclosing the entire details of her father's death. So she always knew about Lonnie. She knew he was her dad, and she knew that from being very, very little that he was in heaven. So she fully understood that Brendan was not her biological father. But I did protect her from all of the details because I didn't want her childhood to, I just didn't want her having those thoughts. I didn't want her thinking about it. I didn't want her picturing it. I just didn't want her to suffer that. So I think, all in all, she had a very happy childhood. And because I met Brendan and we became a family, she never had that feeling of not having a dad because he was her dad for as long as she can't remember life without him. So I don't think so. And I think she was so little at the time because she was a newborn baby. She, they sleep and they eat and they sleep and they eat. So
Yeah.
she wasn't really affected. Certainly not as a baby was she showing any, signs of being upset or distressed. She just was a very peaceful, happy baby. And so I hope not. I hope.
But when she reads or you put out a book like this, how old is she now?
She's 22.
So do you have to go and say, listen, I'm going to write this book. I've written this book. It's going to get published and going to have to talk about it. Do you sort of seek consent or permission, or what do you do?
Well, she wanted – this is I guess, another reason or a motivation for writing the book was because there was always questions. Well, where's her real dad? Why – and to her, why are you lying? Why don't you ever talk about your real dad? And the thing was she never spoke about it because it was at that time my story. I hadn't told anybody yet. So there was that was probably one of the main reasons is so that she can talk about it and she can be open about it because it was something we didn't discuss for a long time. We kept private as a family for the sake of all of my kids, not just Mia. Whereas now she's an adult and I disclosed the details to her as she grew up slowly.
Right.
Over a period of time. So nothing was ever a shock. Everything in that book Mia already knows. And
but it's public now.
Yeah, it's public. That's right.
How does she feel about that?
Well, as I said, I think she wanted it to be out there so that there wasn't the secrecy or, any hiding, or there's nothing.
No mystery.
There's no mystery. There's no reason for her to feel like she can't talk about it. So, yeah, I think it's been quite freeing and
Like more liberating,
yeah,
as
I think
opposed
so.
to a problem.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You weren't trying to solve a problem. It's just you just feel liberated as a result of unburdening yourself with it in a public sense.
Yeah, I think it was about explaining a lot about our family and why there was no mention of me as biological father, and it's putting it all out there and making people perhaps have a better understanding of why and how and what's what. And for me, I'd always decided from a very early stage, I decided I was going to write about what I went through. And the reason I decided that so long ago was because at the time when I was in the absolute depths of the grief, all I had wanted is for somebody to have said to me, it's going to get better. It does get better. There is hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And, back then there was no connecting with people on social media. So it felt really, really isolating. I felt like I was the only person that was feeling that way. So I decided that I was going to write about my experience, and hopefully, people that are going through something similar will read it and have that same hope, that you can get through it. It is an unbearable journey, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So,
and they can end up where you ended up. It will be at least inspired to try and end up where you've ended up.
That's right. Just to keep moving, keep looking forward. That's the message, and that's what I've done my whole life, no matter what I've gone through.
So Brendan Fevola, how long did it take before you met Brendan? How did you meet Brendan? What's the story there?
So I met Brendan when Mia was 3 through a mutual friend. We were going to have dinner down in Melbourne at a restaurant. It was a really, really hot night. So we went to the Stoke House, which is on the beach there, and Mia would, build sandcastles and we'd grab pizza. And this particular night we went there and Brendan was there with a group of friends, and the person I was with knew Brendan, and so we just met. And from that night on, we pretty much saw each other every day. He was incredible with Mia, and Mia took to him straight away. And yeah, it was just one of those chance meetings that I'd never heard of him before. He'd never heard of me before.
Oh, so you weren't an AFL follower?
Oh, no, not at all. Nah. I'd never even been to a game apart from I went to a lunch once with Penny. But no, I'd never really been into football purely because my family just didn't really. My mum and dad were English, so dad was cricket and soccer, and we just never really were into it. But that soon changed once I met Brendan. I learnt all the rules pretty quickly, and I was attending games. And I mean, I like footy, but I'm still not. It's not. Yeah.
You didn't grow up with it.
No, it's not in me the way I see other people, that are just obsessed with footy and love it. I'm like, I can take it or leave it.
You've got to sort of grow up with it, I think.
I think so, yeah.
So along comes Brendan Vivalda, larger than life, like in every sense. Even he's also a giant, but larger than life in terms of his persona.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting proposition because he would have been. Was he around the same age as you, or not much difference?
He was younger than me. He's 3 years and 9 months younger.
Yeah, okay, so around the same age.
Yeah.
No kids.
Nope.
No, had he been married before?
He was only 22.
Yeah,
so.
He hadn't been married before.
No.
Hadn't gone through all the things that you'd gone through.
No.
No. Was a bit of a bad boy, or a bit of a not bad boy, but a little bit of a wild fella.
Yeah, and not at that stage though. He was still, he just was starting out in his career, so he was, unknown and hadn't sort of, didn't have that reputation yet.
No, the reputation came a bit later, but he wasn't your refined university lecturer or you
don't think?
A capped journalist, who wrote stories for the ABC or something like that. He was a footy player who had natural instincts and natural talents, and by definition, to be good at that sport, you have to be a little bit fearless, a little bit reckless,
yeah, for sure,
and have a crack sort of thing.
Yep.
But nothing bad in him, but the media gave him that outcome as a bad boy.
Yep.
But that's how brands get built by media, but you tumble into it a little bit. He probably tumbled into it a little bit unwittingly, But here he is. He comes along. That's sort of like a fair description, I guess, at the time. And here's you, a mum who's just been through like 2 lifetimes, what most parents would be going through.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a little 3-year-old girl, and I'm guessing she was probably pretty cute and all that sort of stuff.
Very cute, yeah.
And he's probably had no experience whatsoever with raising kids or families. And it can be a difficult thing though.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you be thinking to yourself, shit, here's this guy maybe he's got lots of choices, or he's least popular.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, maybe got lots of choices as a result of that. Not taking anything away from you, but I got a kid, do you go through that process? You're thinking to yourself, bloody hell, is this going to last, or is he just going to be here for a little while and take off? At what point do you start to invest in that relationship?
I think early on I was definitely worried, thinking, oh, he's probably young to be getting into a relationship and having a ready-made family. Definitely was a concern. But it was also, I think, what he found most attractive about me is that I was a mum and that I had a kid. He loves kids. He's very good with kids and genuinely enjoys spending time with kids. So that was never a thing for him. That was never. Some men find that off-putting. Some men find that to be a bit of a drag. He did not. And that was one of the qualities that I really liked about him from the beginning, is he genuinely had no issues with me being a mum already and having a child. So,
but when do you start investing? Like, because you got to be confident in relationships. You've got to be confident about investing in the relationship, and I mean properly investing your emotions, your time, your effort, money, everything, whatever.
I mean, I think because I met him the night I had Mia with me, we were invested pretty quickly, because if I'd met him on my own, I might have kept him at arm's length for a bit longer until I knew that we were, serious, and then introduced him to Mia. But because we met all together, it was sort of, we just were spending time together, and I didn't really consciously think, okay, I'm going to start investing today. It was just a gradual, natural, evolving relationship where we spent more and more time together, and we just became a family. It just naturally sort of happened.
But I'm figuring, so I'm a veteran of this shit, okay? I've been through lots of these things. I'm figuring you would have been you still are, but very attractive at the time.
Thanks.
A very attractive, young woman at the time. You got a cute little kid who's probably, adorable. And Brandon, like me, by the way, I prefer kids and adults, and he probably does too.
Mm-hmm.
So tick that one. On the flip side, I'm assuming you saw him as an attractive guy. I don't know whether he is or isn't. I know what he looks like, but I can't comment on that.
Some people think he is, and some people think he
is. Yeah, but you did.
I did.
I guess.
Yep.
And so like in the early parts of the relationship, everybody's all excited, and it's all cool and fun and blissful and raging and plenty of energy and fresh, brand new, and then. And it moves from that to becoming, or to a newer for everybody's been. In other words, to be enduring, and you need to become friends, like really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you can never really say that at the beginning, because you don't know enough about the people.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know how people react in certain circumstances. And that's how you become familiar with people, watching how they react when things happen in front of them. And we'll talk about, obviously there was a drama, and because you probably never knew how he would react when someone else attractive is in his environment, in which case, he was able to be distracted from you and Mia. If you hadn't known that at the time, would you have said, I'm not going to do this? Or did you always think that you were just happy to go step by step by step, discover, because I think it's an important thing, people listening and perhaps reading a book too, as a lesson for us. Sometimes you do have to go step by step by step. Don't try and predict, and just wear it on the chin or deal with it at the time when something reveals itself. Did you actually think that for yourself? And if not, how would you reflect on it?
Well, I think we don't have the, ability to foresee the future. So I think anyone can only ever take it step by step. In answer to your question, if I'd known, would I have continued on? Um, I don't think anyone would set themselves up for that kind of heartache and stress and troubles.
Just drama.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would want to invite that into their lives. But having said that, would I change anything now? No, because everything that we've been through together has brought us to the place we are today, which is with our beautiful daughter, Toby. So,
Yeah.
I think everybody has dramas in their life, and we all have to go through different types of, troubles and stresses, but it does shape us as people. And, I think it's given me a lot of resilience. Everything I've been through has helped make me the person I am today, which has helped me in all aspects of my life, including business. It's made me be, a lot tougher, a lot more, I don't know, aware, I guess. And yeah, I where we are today, I feel like we're both very grateful for where we are and what we have and what we've built, and having our family back together is, that is the ultimate happiness for us. And so, no, I wouldn't change anything.
This book's a bit of a tell-all. It's actually quite instructive as well, in terms of your experiences, and it has a good outcome, as you just said. And you just said you wouldn't change anything. But some people always feel as though there's something to be worried about, and therefore they never jump into a relationship because of it. They get too nervous about it. Whether that's as a result of having been hurt in a previous relationship or having seen someone else, or none of those things, just sort of being cynical. How did you become non-cynical? Or how do you take yourself from being the person who went through a lot of hurt and pain? How did that not become or make you a cynical sort of person, and just made you what seems to me like actually a grateful person for the experience?
Yeah. I guess it's all perspective, isn't it? It's how you look at it. And I think when I was in the thick of it, I was cynical and I was, resentful, and I was definitely bitter. And there was a lot of that. I went through it, and I think sometimes too, when you are faced with your greatest fears, no matter what they are, and I've been faced with a couple of them in my life, it's that sense of, oh, well, it's happened now, so I'm not worried about that anymore. That's kind of how I felt. Like,
you can be more fearful of what's going to happen, and once it happens, it's not that scary.
Yeah, the anticipation of something happening can sometimes be worse than the actual event, and not always. Not in the early parts of my life. That certainly wasn't the case. But yeah, I think I definitely worked through those emotions. I think my advice to people is that are feeling like they're caught up in that bitterness and have become quite cynical, that's okay to feel that, and definitely let that wash over you and go through those motions, but you can't stay there. I think you've got to work through it, and you've got to move on, and you've got to change your perspective. And that's, I think, something I feel probably really most fortunate about is I always naturally will revert to a positive perspective. I don't know why, but I do. I'll always look at the glass half full, and I'll try to find that silver lining in whatever the situation is. And I think if that's what you're focusing on, and if you're focusing on the positives, it definitely attracts more positives. I know that when you're caught in a negative cycle, you're definitely attracting more negative. So yeah, I think that is my advice, is just try to get yourself out of it, work through it, accept it, feel the anger, and then put it behind you.
So where the fuck did you learn all this stuff from? You've gone through it, like, probably couldn't get much worse, and having a child, being ill as a result of what happened after the child's delivery, your partner taking his life unexpectedly, then having a positive attitude, so much so that your positive attitude, so much so that you were able to remain attractive, not physically, but attractive as a person. For someone like Brendan, like, want to invest in you and your baby. Your daughter hasn't turned out like badly affected. She's stable and all that sort of stuff. You've had enough chutzpah in you to actually go and write a book about it. Then you're going through the drama with Brendan, and the person he was allegedly the person who he sort of stepped out with for a short period of time, whose name I'm not even going to mention, by the way, because I don't think it's worth mentioning. If people want to know, they can read the book. It's in the book. It's not like you don't disclose it, but I don't really want to talk about that person. Where does this come from? Is that something you just grew into, or is that something your parents are responsible for, or did you have such a great upbringing that, your parents gave you a blessed upbringing such that you're always going to find the positives, or is that something you had to learn to do?
I definitely credit my parents with making me quite a strong individual. I think education, my mum's a very intelligent woman, and she drummed education into me. And I think having a greater understanding of everything, greater comprehension of how the world works and all of that definitely helps give you the tools to deal with things in life. But it was probably something I learned to do, I think.
Consciously?
Consciously and subconsciously. I think it's a survival instinct that you've got to look for the positives, and you've got to look for the hope. And when you're desperately, sad and in a really dark place, you are scrambling to find something. And for me, obviously being a mother was the single thing that saved me, I think, and made me get myself together really quickly. Because if I didn't have a baby, I don't know that the situation would have unfolded the way it has for me. I think being a mother and having a child that depends on you every day, that I had to get up for, I had to function. I couldn't just, pull the doona over my head and be depressed for 6 months. I couldn't do it. So it was necessity. There was definitely necessity. There was no choice in the matter. I could not just stop being a mother and go into a depression and leave my baby for everyone else to deal with. I couldn't do that, and I wouldn't do that. And I felt a real strong obligation that what he'd done, I was not going to be that person for her. I was not going to let it affect her life. And I just wanted...
This is Mia's life.
That's right. I wanted her to have a happy life, and having a depressed nutcase of a mother is not going to benefit her in any way, shape or form, or me or anyone around me. So I just think you have no choice. I mean, yeah, I think you've got no choice but to try to find hope and to try to be positive and pick yourself up and carry on. That's just the way it was for me.
At that time of Brandon's waywardness, if I could describe it that way, had yours and his baby been born?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, out of interest, when it happened, I guess you ask a whole 1,000 million questions of yourself. What was it that do you think, was missing between the two of you that put him in a position where he felt as though that's something he should do? Did you think, I'm not asking you to tell me now, but did you think that to yourself? Did you think, shit, what is it I'm not doing? Or did you have a little bit of blame going on?
Nope.
No.
I don't think it's ever that, no, I certainly don't. It's not anything I had any decision or any influence over whatsoever. You would have to ask the people involved. It's not something I can really answer.
But did you ask yourself that though at the time? Did you start to examine yourself? I mean, what happens in those situations? You just sit down and start examining stuff about yourself, your relationship. What have I done wrong?
No, I never felt like I did anything wrong either. I just think it was, a situation where he was very young. We'd got into a very serious relationship very quickly, and perhaps weren't ready for, a committed relationship. I don't think it was anything wrong as such. It was
immaturity.
Immaturity, yeah. That's 100% pretty much what I think it was. We were just in a situation that was very, grown up and a lot for a 22-year-old, and I just think it was a silly mistake. It wasn't necessarily anything missing or wrong. It was just, something that was unfortunate that happened, and you learn from it and you move on.
Do you think that your experiences, what I consider to be your strength of character, and or resilience is a word everyone seems to use. Let's use it, resilience for a moment. But at least your strength of character, your positive attitude, your ability to recover, sort of just strength and energy, it's a persona. Do you think that was something that was very attractive at the time to Brendan? That's something he needed in his life as a younger man?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think
that.
that.
I mean, not just because you're a mother, but you
No.
are demonstrating all those strength of characters that a typical mother, in someone's mind, imagination, unconsciously or subconsciously, might have pinned up in their brain.
I think, Brendan definitely has made no secret of the fact that a lot of what attracted him to me was, I had my own business. I had really got my life together. I was quite mature for my age. And he found that really attractive. And I think that definitely had something to do with it.
And he still needs it probably.
Yeah, I think we both, we work well. His weaknesses are my strengths and vice versa.
Well, can I ask you what they are? I mean, that's what I was sort of leading towards, if you don't mind. Your strengths are obvious. Brandon's not. I don't know him. I know he tried to get on the Celebrity Apprentice one stage. He just missed out, only because we already had an AFL person on there. But
I don't think he tried to get on. I think he was asked.
Yeah. But we had an AFL person already on there.
Yeah.
And I just there's no point having two. Someone put him to me, but I don't know the guy, so I only know him from what I see afar. What works for you guys? So what is a big positive from Brandon's point of view, apart from being a good father? But what do you see for you?
Oh, look, he's got so many positives. I think if you did know him, you would understand. He's got a presence that lights up a room. He is fun, just a very fun person. He lifts the spirits of everybody. Everyone that works with him will say the same. He's just brings the vibe up. Very happy, very positive.
Big energy
and positive energy and hardworking, punctual. He's got some, I think, traits that people don't realise. I think they associate him as the larrikin that must also be irresponsible. But he's so punctual, so responsible, man of his word. He says he's going to be there, he's there. Amazingly charitable, will do anything for anybody. Very, very helpful, kind, generous. So they're the things that have probably not reported as much. They're the reasons why, I loved him and, I'm still with him today.
Yeah, you really love him, don't you?
I sure do, yeah. Of course. I mean,
the media's never going to report that because it doesn't sell newspapers. But they're going to report all the other rubbish, which unfortunately is how things work these days and have been working like that for a long time. But if they're the things that sort of they're the glue to keep you with him, and clearly he's with you for the reasons you explained earlier, and he's talked about it, the positives about you and your strength. I mean, I didn't know you either, and I'm actually I'm not surprised. It's probably not the right word, but as we speak, I'm getting a greater sense of who you are, and you're more than strong. You sort of got your shit together. You got it together. You really have, and that's probably not a very good turn of phrase, but you got it together. I can sense it, and you're not easily rattled. So you haven't been rattled. Well, when I say everyone gets rattled, but on a permanent basis. So much so that as you said earlier, you've gone through probably two of the worst things that anyone can go through: infidelity. When you're not expecting it, and there's kids involved, and worse still, a death of someone close to you. So to be able to hold that all together and not become like a crazy person, like I think you said, like whatever the words were you used, which by the way, a lot of people just do. They just lose it.
Yeah. I know.
And they go crazy for a while.
Exactly. And that's the thing I said, you have to go through that. You have to be a little bit crazy for a while and bitter and angry and sad and all those feelings. So I don't want to, confuse what I'm saying. I definitely did go through times in those stages in my life where I felt like that. But I think the important thing is to not stay there and not get caught into that habit of playing victim, poor me, My life's so crap. Like, I think you can't stay in that mindset. You've got to try and look at what you do have, the opportunities you have, the abilities you have, your health. Those are the things that, for me, particularly having, the health issue as well, it made me very, very aware of how lucky you are to be mobile and healthy. And therefore, opportunities are yours for the taking. You've just got to go for it. You've got to want it. You've got to believe you can do it as well. So it is all comes back to mindset. And I think if someone's feeling stuck in that rut and that mental cycle of, and I think depression is a completely different thing. I just want to clarify that. Actual clinical depression is very different from suffering trauma and being that, consequently having an effect on your mood. I think they're two different things, and I can't say or speak for anyone that has depression. But if you're just in a rut and in a bad place through events in your life, then I think it's really about changing your mindset and trying to find that hope and head in that direction.
And I like the word you just used, but I'd like to explore it a little bit, mindset. People are in business, like in this country at the moment, we've gone through, particularly in New South Wales, we've gone through 2 years of lockdowns. We've gone through, in New South Wales, floods. Prior to the lockdowns, we had bushfires. Then we had a drought. Then we've gone through the floods and like traumatic floods. Big deal. Businesses are affected everywhere, and there'll be business people listening all over the country to these sorts of discussions. Potential interest rates rising, can't get employees to work for you, wages are going up. And they often talk about mindset. And, there's a different set of circumstances, traumatic circumstances to your traumatic circumstances. But nonetheless, mindset becomes a big deal. How do I get my mind set? How do I structure my thought processes? And I often talk about using routine. What are some of the techniques you use? Would you mind sharing some of the techniques that you use to get your mind set right?
Well, I think in everything, including business, when there's a problem, instead of letting the problems overwhelm you and feel like, there's no way out, and get yourself into a panic, set the problems in order. Problem, always a solution. So, okay, deal with one thing at a time. Keep calm. I think panicking, particularly in business, I think it's easy to get very overwhelmed and panic. But I guess it's just about, prioritizing and, like you said, routine and forming good habits and not letting things get too big and get on top of you.
When you say routine and habits, like what do you mean though? Do you mean like this week or every week for the next 2 months, I'm going to get up at a certain time, I'm going to go do something with my daughter or read a book or read a couple of paragraphs of something that I can learn about or do the gym? What do you mean by that? What in particular?
For me, it's probably a bit looser, as in exercising regularly, getting enough sleep, eating well, cutting down on alcohol, eliminating bad habits that do drag you down in every aspect of your life, and staying focused on the goal, staying focused on, if it's business, why you started the business in the first place, what your purpose is, why you're doing what you're doing. I think if you hard work and belief, those two, and the passion, 3, I should say, as long as you're staying true to that, then technically you should be able to get yourself out of whatever problems you're in at the time. But I think it's when people lose their way, panic, let things get on top of them and don't sort of work through them at the time, perhaps burying the head in the sand a little bit if things get hard. It's facing things front on, dealing with them at the time, and then moving on in everything.
When I look at this, it says silver linings, which is a great turn of phrase, but the part that to me is the most important part, and it's a personal thing, but it says it's a journey to happiness. And I just wanted to even take the word journey out because we covered the journey. And happiness is different for everybody. I have a view that you shouldn't chase happiness. You just be happy enough. Whatever's in front of you, just be happy enough with what it is. But you've also got a business, and we haven't really talked much about the business. What is the name of your business, and tell me exactly what it is? Not exactly, but what is it? Describe
It's
for me.
Runway Room. It's a cosmetics company, started in service and then went into product development. We're an Australian-made cosmetic line, and we have grown from one salon to we at one point had 5 salons, a makeup academy. But more importantly, today where we are is we're a really well established now Australian brand that sells Australian manufactured cosmetics all over the country. And it's one of my greatest passions. It's probably a big part of my happiness would be feeling very fulfilled and having a real passion for what I do.
So if I was to ask you, because you can only write a few words on the front of these books, but is it really a journey to fulfillment and a journey to purpose?
Probably, equals happiness.
Which means you are happy enough.
Because, I am. And you're right. There's no destination of happiness and, suddenly everything's wonderful. It's always moving anyway. Everything's always moving and changing and evolving. And some days are really happy and some days aren't. And you have your bad days still. And so, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's about always appreciating what you've got. And so being happy enough with your lot in life. There's always people with more and better this and better that. And there's always people that are worse off than you. So it's about really acknowledging what you have and feeling genuine gratitude for that. And that's why I think I feel happy as a person. I feel quite content because I'm not comparing myself to someone else and wishing I had more. I'm always striving for more and striving to be better, but I'm not feeling inadequate, or I think comparing ourselves to others is the worst thing you can do. And if anything, I'm always feeling very grateful that I, am in a position of to have a roof over my head, to give my kids a good life. And it's really looking at what you have and acknowledging that, and that will give you a daily sense of happiness and gratitude.
And I love the word gratitude because it is a journey to gratitude. It is a journey to purpose or fulfilling a purpose. Your makeup products, they're Australian made. They're all, which I presume means sourced in Australia and packaged and whatever.
No. They are actually manufactured here, all of them, except our tools. So our brushes and things are made overseas, but when
you say cosmetics, we're talking about like makeup, okay?
Yeah, colour cosmetics.
Pardon my ignorance.
That's okay.
And it's for what age group? What we're talking about? Sort of.
Well, one of our, I guess, key taglines is ageless. So we're very much a broad age group. We started in our service side of the business doing, school formals right through to brides, mother of the brides, special events. So we started with a very broad age group. The products themselves are really designed for any woman that just wants to feel good. They're weightless, glowy, fresh, natural. We're very much the more than no makeup. So people that want that effortless, want to look a bit polished, but don't necessarily want to look overly done. And I think we've definitely probably hit the mark with the more mature women. I think the weightless formulas, the glowy, more youthful sort of dewy finishes definitely appeal to sort of 35 and over. But having said that, we've got a stack of young customers as well that are loving our products. So
and where do people buy your product? Is it an online?
So we have an online store, so it's runwayroom.com, and we also have stockists all over Australia, mainly salons, like independent stores and salons that stock our product, looking now to sort of enter the retail market, so hoping to find the right retailer, in the next 12 months and be able to offer it, because we have, customers from all over Australia wanting to try it, can't necessarily get to anybody physically to try it. So, I'd like to partner with a national retailer this year and offer it to more people.
And how many years has this been in the making? Runwayroom.com.
Everyone does that. I'm like, really should have rethought the name.
RRR.
Yeah. It's 10 years. It's 10 years this year. It's 10-year anniversary. And the cosmetic line was sort of established in 2014 we started, but we officially relaunched in 2019 because I went through a rebrand process. And so the cosmetics themselves, the products, essentially began in 2019, and we've had an incredible growth period throughout COVID. We were really lucky that although the service side of the business suffered, obviously we had to close, the cosmetics themselves just went through the roof. And I think it was, I guess, people were at home, they had more time, they were watching our content, they were watching our tutorials, and gave them a chance to sort of step outside their normal routine and try something new. And I think Australians are really wanting to support Australian-made products now. And I think one thing that people don't realise is our manufacturing standards here are much higher than anywhere else in the world. So if you're looking for clean, safe, non-toxic products, look at Australian manufactured products, because our standards are really high. We don't have any use of PFAs in any of our products, whereas in America, you've got 3/4 of the mascaras contain PFAs, 2/3 of foundations contain PFAs, and that's just standard in America. So, yeah, I think that's definitely something that's hit the mark with the Australian consumer.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with the whole story, like from where you started, from a 22-year-old suffering, relatively speaking, quite a heavy burden, or carrying a heavy burden, through to where you are today with runwayroom.com and all your products. But your presence is probably bears more testament to your success than anything else. You have a great presence. You seem to be very even-handed. As you said, you're very happy and grateful, and you've got a good business, a great family now. I'm glad to know that you and Brendan are happy and the whole family's happy. Your kids are growing up. Kids never stop growing up, by the way. I've got 4 sons. My oldest is 40. They never stop growing up. And by the way, nor do we. We don't stop growing up. But well done. Congratulations. It's a good read. This sort of stuff is not about dread, and it's not about how tough I did it. It's about, if you're feeling like it's a bit tough for you, well, guess what? I've been through it. Maybe this will help you get there.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what I hope people get out of it.
Alex Fevola, thanks very much for coming on Straight Talk.
Thank you for having me.